there's a difference between the bearing the weight of, is this going to succeed or fail? How are we going to set things up? Where are we going to get the sound equipment? Who's going to lead worship?
Yeah.
Everything that is involved in it. And I feel like that's where I haven't, I guess, really thought through this too much, but I feel like when you've done that and borne the weight of all those things, you can say you've planted the church.
Hi, welcome to this very special podcast conversation. This is special because it's a collaboration between the podcast that I host, Expositors Collective, and the podcast that Brian Kelly hosts, which is Cultivate Church Planting Podcast. We had a conversation last month when we were together in Colorado, and we've decided to co-release it on both of our feeds, both of our YouTube channels, because we think it's going to benefit both of the subscribers. And I know there's a large overlap between the two of us anyway. So shout out in the comments. Let me know if you are a subscriber to Expositors Collective or Cultivate, or more than likely both. But we're glad you're here, and here's this conversation with myself and Brian about church planting, about the weight of church planting, but then also about how church planters are a whole lot more like gardeners than like entrepreneurs or CEOs. And I think there's something that's going to benefit anyone who is interested in church planting or is a veteran who has been doing this for decades. Also, while I have your attention, I want to invite you to join me in Temecula, California, May 15th and 16th. We're having our next Preachers Training event. These are wonderful 2-day events. It's going to start Friday afternoon, and then it's going to go all day Saturday. And it's a combination of like experts, specialized teaching from the front about aspects of sermon preparation and delivery, followed by group work and like coaching from experienced practitioners. It really is going to help you grow in your personal study and public proclamation of God's word. Whether you're planting a church, whether you're serving in youth ministry, whether you are leading an established church, all of us need to grow in these important skills. And May 15th and 16th is a great opportunity for you to invest in your gift or in the team that you serve with. So I hope to see you there. Before this conversation between Brian and myself takes place, I want to encourage you to stick around to the very end because there is a recording that somebody sent in inviting you to come to the May event. But I gotta say, the first time I played this recording, it actually kind of brought a tear to my eye, and well, almost brought a tear to my eye. And I want to make sure that you stick around to the end as well. Don't click exit before it comes to a conclusion. All right, here's my conversation with Brian Kelly. All right. Hey, welcome to the Cultivate Church Planting Podcast. I am your guest host, Mike Neglia, and my esteemed guest today is usually the host, Brian Kelly. Hi, Brian.
Oh, hi, Mike. It's nice to be here on your show today.
Oh, well, hey, I love listening to the Cultivate Church Planting Podcast, and I enjoy it, but I often think, I bet I could do a better job.
And then now we will see.
Have you ever been a guest on the show?
No, I have not.
Okay.
I have never been a guest on this show about church planting.
Yes.
Although I was on another podcast talking about church planting.
Yeah.
And I was a guest, but I don't know if I was a very good guest.
Okay.
I feel like sometimes I'm good at asking questions, but not necessarily answering questions.
I feel the same way. You asked me to be on this show, and I said, no way, but I'll ask you questions instead.
Yeah.
So I think the people that listen to the show, they've, maybe they've heard you like pull out good stories, good advice, good insight from guests, but I get to do that to you.
Okay.
Okay. So how many churches have you planted?
So that's kind of a tricky question because I've been part of
Seems pretty straightforward to me.
It is, but when you say have you planted,
Okay.
So I've been part of a team for about 7 church plants.
Got it.
But not necessarily the main church planter.
Okay.
Of those teams. So churches that I have planted, Yeah, it's tricky. So let's take Uganda for example.
Right.
That was the second church plant that I was a part of. The first one was in Athens, Georgia. Lynn and I first got married, and we were invited to go with a pastor who was planting a church in Athens, and I was very young at the time, very young, being 22 years old,
Yeah.
which now I would consider very, very young.
Right.
But at the time, I
Do you
felt
have
like
kids that are 22?
we had our first son in Georgia. That's where he was born.
But currently now, do you have any 22-year-old kids?
I have a 25-year-old kid.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, our youngest is 20.
Ah.
Yeah. So when I look at my kids they're kind of, and you can speak to this too because your kids are international. They travel a lot. They've seen more than just, the suburban neighborhoods.
Yeah.
So I feel like they have a little bit more maturity and have grown up a little bit faster than most. But I feel like in the 90s, so I'm Gen X.
Okay.
What year were you born?
82.
82.
I'm a Zennial, so I'm half Gen X, half
yes.
millennial.
So I'm 78.
Okay.
So I'm right at the end of Gen X, although I identify as more of a millennial than a Gen X,
Okay.
if that's a thing.
Okay.
Is that acceptable on this podcast?
People don't do that anymore. People stopped identifying as things about a year and a half ago.
Okay, so I...
Sorry to get you off
No,
track.
no,
So
but I was already off topic.
At 22 years old, you were involved in a church plant in Athens, Georgia.
Yes.
Okay.
And it was my first time to teach. I taught a college Bible study. It was a college town. And a little church startup, and I taught a college Bible study, and I really loved it. And that's kind of when I felt like, hey, this is something I might like to do on a more regular basis and to perhaps be a pastor one day. So we were there for 2 years. And then we did a brief stint in Montana at a church that had been planted up there. And that church sent out a team to plant a church in Kampala, Uganda. I wasn't the lead on that team in the beginning, so I can't take any... I mean,
Sure.
None of us can take credit for the churches that are planted.
The Lord's
Hallelujah.
church. The Lord's church, yes.
Amen. But I was able to go with that team and be basically the assistant pastor, worship leader, kind of... We started a Bible college, Calvary Chapel Bible College. That pastor that went out to plant that church ended up being called back to the States within the first year. So we had just gotten started. We'd worked together on that. And then I became the pastor by default at 24 years old.
Wild.
And we were there for 10 years. So from that church, we sent out a lot of church plants, and we actually planted another church. I planted another church. We called it a satellite campus. It was a cool thing to do back then. But it ended up being its own church with its own pastor and on board and everything. So all the way, to answer your question, I would probably say realistically 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you're not counting Athens or
I'm
Kampala.
counting Kampala.
Yeah, Kampala.
I'm counting it.
It feels like it counts.
Yeah, I'm counting 2 in Kampala, actually.
Are you? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, counting that one double.
Yeah, because if anybody's ever planted a church, there's a difference between bearing the weight of, is this going to succeed or fail? How are we going to set things up? Where are we going to get the sound equipment? Who's going to lead worship?
Yeah.
Everything that is involved in it. And I feel like that's where I haven't, I guess, really thought through this too much, but I feel like when you've done that and borne the weight of all those things, you can say you've planted the church.
Okay.
But the church plant, I should say this, because I always make sure to point out, and people who listen to this show before have heard the importance of teams. Like,
Yes.
You cannot plant a church by yourself. You have to have people with you that are doing all these different things. So
Okay.
It's definitely a team effort each and every time.
Why do you emphasize that so much?
Because I think in our church culture, maybe even within Calvary Chapel, it's very popular to emphasize one single individual as the leader and responsible for everything that happens. And I think that's really unhealthy, especially in a church plant, because a lot of church plants fail. High percentage. I don't even know the actual percentage,
Yeah.
but it's high. If Nick Cady was here, he would know.
Yeah. Maybe we'll add it. We'll add it in post.
But the reason why I emphasize this is because I've seen so many and personally experienced relationships with people who have failed because they lacked a camaraderie and a team to do it.
Right. Have you ever attempted it on your own?
No.
Okay. And so you've seen others go out.
Yes.
And
even from within our own, like in Kampala, the church now has planted over 50 churches. And these are, we're not talking American churches where they have a big building and pews or chairs. These are sometimes, you would consider them home fellowships. If you got 15 people in a little village, pastor, they're doing all the stuff. But I have seen people go out and not make it because they don't have the team.
Yeah. Well, I got to speak at one of the churches that has been planted out of Cultivate Kampala. And on the one hand, it is a home fellowship in that it's in a house.
Yes.
But it's actually not in a house anymore. It's in the backyard. It's outside with a tent.
They can't fit in the house.
They can't fit in the house. So that's, really exciting fruit to your account. You say that sometimes people go out and they fail. Pretty harsh. What,
fail?
Yeah. Why? Yeah. What's a failed church plant?
Yeah, that's a good question, Mike. You're good at this.
I'm trying. That's you're just stalling trying to think of the answer.
Yeah.
So like someone's listening to this and maybe they've been part of a church plant.
They failed.
That did not continue on.
Yes.
And how are they to hear such binary language?
Do you think it would be more helpful to not say they failed? Do you think it'd be better to say it didn't succeed at this time?
Here's what I'm comfortable with. I'm comfortable with stats, to say like, 60% of new churches fail within the first 2 years,
But when you're talking to a person.
Yeah, to think about like, well,
I didn't even think about
Christopher
that.
over here, he failed.
Yeah, so he's listening to this and he's like, I failed.
Yeah.
Oh man.
But I'd say Christopher.
Sorry, Christopher.
Was faithful to what God asked him to do, and I hope he tried hard. I hope he was, faithful with those opportunities. I hope that he didn't squander his time or resources. But sometimes things are just
exactly.
They just
Well, maybe he should have got a team and he wouldn't have failed.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, Christopher. You're on the hook.
No, that's a good point. I'm joking around, but it's not, when you go out and try something for the Lord, that's a step of faith.
Yeah.
And we often say this, so I see where you're coming from, is we're not responsible for the results, because you could do everything right and still quote unquote fail. And I don't think that would be necessarily a failure in God's eyes. What I meant by that was just the church didn't continue on it. There's no people, there's no church there anymore.
Yeah.
It started and then it stopped.
Correct.
So it's not fair to say to Christopher that he failed if he did everything he knew to do, he was called to do, and it just didn't work out, and that happens.
Yeah. Something that our mutual friend Justin Thomas said, he said this, we were on a group call 6 months ago or something, and he says that God always measures faithfulness in the present tense.
Ooh.
You remember that?
That's smart.
It just really struck me, because I was just like, wow, because in the present tense, you're doing what he asked you to do.
And that's success.
Absolutely. Success is, I guess, like endeavoring with all your might to do what God's asked you to do. Mm-hmm. And there's, faithfulness is kind of, to some degree, up to us. Like, we want to be faithful. And then fruitfulness, to some degree, is out of our hands.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting conversation, because fruitfulness is out of our hands. You can't force a tree. So if you talk about church planting.
Yeah, we'll get there.
You can't force an apple tree to make an apple.
Right.
But what you can do is you can plant it in a place where it gets sun. You can water it.
Yep.
You can put nutrients into the ground. You can do a lot of different things. But ultimately, you're not able to. People have done that. I mean, look at the fig tree that Jesus cursed. He walked by it. Mm-hmm. He expected it to be fruitful. It wasn't.
Okay, yeah.
And why was that? Just God's hands, I guess.
Yeah, I think there's a uniqueness to that particular thing, but
that was a bad example.
It's okay. We'll edit it out in post. Okay, so actually, I want to talk to you more about like these 5 churches that you planted.
Okay.
But this is the Cultivate Church Planting podcast.
Yes.
And I actually wanted to talk to you about like what is planting, and what does planting have to do with this initiative that you're doing, or these 5 churches that you've started or have been part of the team. Like how and why, like where does this language of planting come from?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah,
Mike, you have good questions.
Well, you're so kind. like a non-Christian friend of mine, this is a couple of years ago, he was listening to the Mars Hill podcast, The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill, just because it was just popular at the time.
Yeah.
And then he was in contact with me kind of throughout it. Oh yeah, he's into this whole,
Right, he's a church guy.
Yeah, yeah. And one of the questions that he asked was, what is church planting? Why do they keep calling it church planting? And it reminded me of what inside jargon that we have.
Yeah.
And so
Christianese.
why do we call it church planting?
Yeah. It's a good question. And I think of it, like I think of the perspective, take an outside person that's new to Christianity or they don't understand the languages. If you were to go because they have business planting in the world, but they don't call it business planting. They call it a startup.
Yeah.
A business startup.
Yeah.
So if you were to tell someone, hey, I'm going to go do a church startup, that would be a reasonable thing to say because you're going to start up a church. I think the reason why it's called planting, and you might be able to help me out with some verses too, is that a church is more than just a business. It's more than an organization. It's more than a startup. A church is an organic, growing thing. So the Bible talks about the church in terms of the body, like a human body, which is an organic, growing, living thing. As opposed to a business, which is a structure and an organization. And so I think in that sense, planting is a better word because it represents something that it grows up organically and produces fruit. And I think also coming back to the biblical metaphors of bearing fruit. It's always Jesus and the New Testament. It's always talking about fruitfulness and bearing fruit. And I think when we think of the church in terms of a business, like so here's the sad thing. This might be off topic, but you got churches out there that, I think it was D.L. Moody who said in the New Testament, if the Holy Spirit left the church would cease to exist.
Yeah.
In modern day churches, if the Holy Spirit left the church, it would continue on business as usual. And that speaks to the fact that we see churches as more of a venue, a business, a gig even, than an organic living thing that's dependent on the Holy Spirit, on Christ, who said, I am the vine, you are the branches, which is a cultivating term.
Cultivating, yes, yeah, yeah. I think there was a A.W. Tozer who said that.
Tozer, okay.
But
right.
yeah, it's such a.
They're the same person, aren't they?
They go by their first initial and second initial.
Yeah, that's
all the greats.
Yeah.
All the greats.
Yeah, you got DL, you got AW,
CH,
yeah,
DA,
CH, DA,
etc. Okay, so you talked about there's that verse that Paul talks about with the church in Corinth, and he says, I planted, Apollos watered, and God made it grow.
Yeah.
And that image of I guess planting, of starting something, it's great, but also it kind of shows that like the results are actually not up to the planter,
right,
or even the waterer, but it's up to God who makes it grow.
Exactly. That's a perfect verse.
Yeah.
Can we edit this part out where you said the answer and then I say it now?
It's up to you, Brian. You're the one who's going to allegedly edit these things.
So just in case, oh yeah, Mike. And another verse is, I can't do it.
You're ruthless. Okay, yeah. So, because this is kind of on my mind. I just finished a great book by Matthew Erickson called The Pastor as Gardener.
Okay.
And he just talks about, all of these images, and you've even referenced some of them, about starting churches, I guess, or even running churches, ministering in churches. It all has this like cultivating, tending language.
Yeah.
You've been talking about how there's the underground work of kind of the roots.
The root system.
And then there's the above ground work of leaves and fruits and fruitfulness. And I really enjoyed it and just been kind of thinking through that.
Cool.
And then now that I get to temporarily host the Cultivate Church Planting podcast, I thought I'd talk about, this planting imagery.
Yeah.
And then I was going to say, why did you guys choose to name it Cultivate?
So the name Cultivate was given to the ministry from our dear founder, Nick Cady.
Okay.
Who's still with us.
Yes.
Thankfully.
He's in the next room, actually.
Yeah, he's actually in the next room. And it comes from the language of gardening, of planting and watering and nurturing, growing, and then ultimately becoming fruitful. And then what happens, take the apple tree again for the example.
Yes.
What happens when the apple is mature and has fruit, it not only nourishes the person who eats from it, but it also has little seeds and those seeds can be taken out and planted, and then they grow into their own nourishing tree, and that's just a beautiful and biblical, as you pointed out, picture of what a church does.
That's fantastic. Yeah, so there's like a potential orchard in every
There's an orchard in every
single
apple.
Yeah.
Ooh.
That's wonderful.
I think I've heard that before.
Yeah.
It's really good, though. I'm glad you said it.
I'm glad I said it, too. So, okay, back to this apple thing. Okay, so you mentioned earlier that it's not up to the farmer, it's not up to the gardener whether there's fruit or not. But you pointed out, yes, but also it's up to the gardener to know where to plant the apple tree, how to tend it, what to, whether to water it or not, too. I'm wondering, with your, I guess, 5 official church plants, 7 church plants you've been a part of, what are the things that you've noticed? What are the patterns you've learned over the years to have quote unquote success?
Yeah.
As a good gardener, as a planter, what are the sort of things that you notice that you want to make sure that you do? So you've planted your most recent church, West Church.
In
This is your 5th or your 7th church, however you're counting it. What are the things that you made sure to be like, all right, I've done this before. I want to make sure that we don't drop the ball on this. We make sure that we do this. We plant the apple seed here. So what are those things?
Yeah, that is a really good question. And something that I would say to our listeners too is that I, along the way, even this most recent church plant, I look back and I think, oh man, I should have done that differently. I should have done that better. So it doesn't. You don't have to be a master gardener to have a fruitful church or a lasting church. So I don't want to discourage anybody that's listening, because a lot of times you get into it, especially when you're in the thick of it, and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. I need help. Well, we're here to help you. Cultivate. Shameless plug.
Yeah.
But I want to say that first and foremost, I don't have it all figured out, and I've made mistakes and grown along the way.
And maybe we'll do an episode later of all your mistakes.
But man,
I want to hear about what you did right.
Multiple episodes.
Yeah. What did you and the team you're part of do right?
Sure. Yeah. That's and if I think back on it, I'm sure there's a lot of things I could talk about. The number one thing, I'm going to state the obvious things because I think they need to be stated. The number one thing is God calling you to do this? Or are you just ambitious and want to do something that, for whatever motivation? And there's always a little tinge of wrong motivation when you're a missionary and you're part of Calvary Chapel, and Calvary Chapel magazine was it was the thing that you wanted to get in. And man, if we could get you always think these things, this is what goes on behind the scene that no one ever confesses to.
Yeah.
I want to be,
good motives, layered with little
selfish
tinges.
ambitions. Yeah. So I would say, first and foremost, the calling of God, because unless the Lord builds the house, so now we go to a different house metaphor.
Okay, yeah.
Unless the Lord builds the house, you're laboring in vain who build it. You can make something happen, just like in a business. If you got enough money and enough talent, you can make a church. But is it God's church? Is it something that God wants to do? So always really sensing the calling of the Lord and making sure. I mean, you don't want to wait around too long because God can't steer a parked car.
Okay.
But you want to make sure that calling is there. Secondly, I've already talked about it, team.
Yeah.
Team. So we got a lot of, so let me just say this. I know there's church planners out there or people who have been part of a church where they said, oh, my church just started because my pastor and his wife, flew into some random town that they'd never been to. Nobody knows them. They don't know anybody.
Yes.
And they started the church all by themselves.
Yes.
And that's the way it went. So that's not the best way to do it. I would say you have to have a startup team with at least 4. I just told this to someone the other day who's planting a church up the road from us. We're helping them with Cultivate. And I said, if you can have a team with 4 key individuals on it that do specific things. Number 1, pastor, presumably the lead pastor who's also teaching. Mm-hmm. Number 2, someone for worship. Mm-hmm. Of course, you can watch YouTube karaoke worship if you have to. Yeah. But that's not ideal.
Yeah. You should pay for premium if you do that, though. It's not ideal. It's not
Good
ideal.
Tip.
But
if you do it, pay for premium.
Is even less ideal.
Okay, so a pastor. Number 2, a worship leader. You need someone for children's ministry because a church usually will become more fruitful and grow, and people will start to attend more if there's something not only for them, but for their children as well. Unless they like to do family church where everybody gets in the room and the children scream and you can't hear anything. So
I can tell you have thoughts about that, yes?
the children's ministry.
Yes.
And then you need someone for the technical stuff, the audio and video, and making sure that things work right. And if there's a technical problem, they can help to solve it. And sometimes that can layer on one individual is good at worship and the technical or whatever. But getting a team together is, I think personally, that I attribute to why our churches are still going is we had those key people in place to where, because once the church grows and you've got like 30, 40 people coming, usually you can identify, but that takes time because you don't want someone serving in children's ministry that you just met last week. You know, you want to have the ability to wait for the right people because it's a lot harder to replace someone that's the wrong person than to wait for the right person.
Absolutely. Some of the biggest regrets I have about we're appointing people to positions too quickly, too soon.
Yeah.
Because, I just, again, for me also too, as a foreigner moving into a different nation, I thought it was quite embarrassing to have too many Americans up front.
So you wanted to...
You want to get an Irish guy, or Irish guy or Irish girl.
Yeah.
And so, there's the need that made me feel too undue pressure.
Yeah.
And if there was cautions, I kind of suppressed those checks because, whatever, it'll get, fixed later on.
God will work it out.
Yeah.
No, it's hard. And just to be honest with you, if we go into that other episode of mistakes I've made, our most recent church plant, that we did that as well.
Is that right?
We did it too quickly and laid hands. The Bible says don't lay hands on any one suddenly. And leadership is talking, but we did that and it wasn't good.
Really?
I mean, God had mercy on us. But yeah, so I would say a calling from the Lord, a good team. It doesn't have to be a big team. It just has to be those, especially those key people. And then
a quick question before you move on from that.
Sure.
So ideally there's these 4 positions within the team.
Yeah.
Could they be married to each other? Or okay.
Yeah. So at 2 of our church plants, my brother was the worship leaders, really talented musician. Yeah. And his wife is, so he's extroverted. His wife's very introverted. She would not want to be on stage whatsoever at all at any time.
Yeah.
But she was very talented at technical stuff. So
Wonderful.
Sound and words on the screen and how to get the right subscriptions and all these different things she was very good at. So they were husband and wife, Actually, that's ideal because you're usually going to be able to work together better with people who have done it for a long time.
Okay.
Together like a husband and wife.
Okay. So thanks for that question. So number 1, calling from God. Number 2, a team.
Yeah.
Is there a third?
Let me think about this. I think a third is probably going to be, it would maybe go along with the first one, but a third is going to be the hard work, discipline, and resolve to push through.
Yeah.
Even when it's tough. Because one thing without exception of any church plant I've been a part of or anybody I've talked to is that there's going to be opposition. There will guaranteed be times when you think, did I make the wrong decision? Am I really supposed to be here? Should I call it quits and go home? So I think if you go back to our previous conversation about failure or church not succeeding or not lasting, I think I don't know the percentages of this, but I would believe that a lot of those would have or could have continued if there was a little bit more like just bite down on your mouthpiece. Get to work and trust the Lord that in the times of leanness, he's going to flourish. I knew a guy that had a church of it's not about numbers. We know this. We talked about this on the show a lot. But a very small church, 20 to 25 people for almost 10 years. And then all of a sudden, didn't do anything different, didn't go anywhere different. Yeah. All of a sudden, the church, people started coming, hey, we hear you teach the word, or we hear, you're good with kids, or whatever the thing was. And now they bought their own property recently and have grown into this good-sized church and are able to go out and plant more churches.
Yeah.
Why did that happen?
Yeah.
It was just God's timing.
Huh.
He didn't do anything different. It was all the same.
Wow.
And he was the same person,
That's great.
So you got to know that God allows us to go through seasons for many, many different reasons. But I would say that third thing would be just to have that resolve to say, no matter what, unless God clearly shows me this is not what I need to
Yeah.
close this up,
Yeah.
which he does.
Yeah. Right.
You know,
Right.
I'm going to keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Tenacity.
Tenacity, yeah, resilience,
yeah.
My whole family, we are stubborn. Like the Neglias we're all stubborn, and I talk to my kids about this all the time. Like, it's just like a Neglia family trait. Like we don't quit, and that's a good thing or a bad thing. And, and
it's a bad thing when God's saying quit.
But we stubbornly will do the wrong thing for a long time, and I'm trying to raise my kids to it's okay to stop if you're doing the wrong thing.
Exactly.
But anyway, that's just kind of something my wife and I both we're such determined people,
I have another one. Can I add one more?
Your show, actually my show today.
Your show,
but yes, yeah.
That's right. Okay, this is one that I don't think gets talked about a lot, but I have seen as being important in churches that we've planted, and that is, I would call it a commitment to excellence or a commitment to doing things well or doing things right. So I don't know if this is because of my personality, like if it's OCD or whatever, like a little bit of it, but little things matter when it comes to the church plant. Think of how people are going to feel, what they're going to look at, what they're going to hear when they come into the church. All right, if you've got trash in the corner, even a little piece of trash, or cigarette butts in the parking lot. Our dear founder of Calvary Chapel used to go out and pick up cigarette butts because he had that. It was a commitment to, let's make this the best we can possibly make it. Doesn't mean you need all the nicest equipment like some of the mega churches. We can't afford that stuff. But what you have, do it well. If you're talking about social media, if you're talking about your website, do it. Make it look good. If you don't have the skills to do it, use some of your primary resources to have it done right, because that's how people are gonna. They're whether we like it or not, people's impression matters on whether they become part of this church or not, and those little things add up. So do it well.
Yeah. To quote our other mutual friend, Ted Leavenworth, he's talked to me, and I've heard him talk to others about that same principle of just excellence, doing things well, and he's like, but we can think, oh, that's so shallow,
or superficial.
It's but he says people are shallow, people are superficial, and that's who we want to reach. We want to reach people, and sometimes like people just come in with a bit of shallowness or a bit of superficiality, and so we want to do what we can. Maybe
we don't want that to hinder them from being part of the church.
Exactly. And we don't want to keep people shallow forever, but also we constantly want to be seen, like by God's grace, like people coming in, and to make it a low barrier of entry. And if it looks like we don't care about our church because it's so shabby and poorly put together, and the announcements are just
there's a broken down car in the parking lot or whatever it is. I saw that the other day. That's why I say that.
Did you?
It was a church building. I'm like, oh, what a cool church building. And my wife Lynn was like, look at that broken. It had a tarp on it, broken down car, weeds growing up around it. Had been there for a while. It's like, oh man, that shouldn't be there.
Okay.
Read in the Old Testament about when they were making the temple.
I actually just did.
And the commitment to detail that the Lord provides for the design, the type of materials that were used, just very meticulous when it comes to making it right.
Right. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much, Brian. So you have planted a lot of churches. You know what you're talking about. We've talked about how Cultivate church planting is named.
Yes.
And we've considered even what are the sort of things that we can do as you plant something that just as much as a gardener can set up his seeds for success.
Set up his seeds for success.
You've given us 4 tips, 4 things that you've learned over 7 churches and 5 plants to how we can do that. So make sure your calling is lined up. Make sure you have a good team around you.
Yes.
Work hard, work your butt off.
Yep.
And then be committed to excellence.
Yes.
I think 3 and 4 kind of flow together.
Yeah.
You want to work hard for excellence.
And there's more too. I mean, we could probably go on for a while, but I think you get those and with that team one, I'll just say one more thing about the team one. It's not just the team that's on the ground with you. It's your sending church. It's your mission organization. It's your church plant, like Cultivate. I mean, it's not. I'm not even trying to plug Cultivate. I'm just saying
I had
you need
last questions coming up about that. Yes.
influence and help and coaching from people who have done it before is really helpful with teamwork.
So my last question is actually exactly that, because you mentioned, we talked about Chris earlier, and you're like, Chris, Cultivate, we want to help you.
Yeah.
So how can you help Chris?
He goes by Christopher.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. I feel like I get to know him. We're on. So what
This
does
fictional person?
What does Cultivate do to help people? Like why? So that's the name of the podcast. That's the name of the ministry. But what do you offer to help?
Yeah. So it's called Cultivate, and we talked about the planting kind of imagery for a reason, because if you are just getting started in gardening and you're wanting to plant a garden and make it fruitful, you need to have education. You need to have people around you that are going to tell you, hey, you know what? You really want to plant a garden, but you really are not cut out for it.
Oh, okay.
Evaluation, assessment is what we offer, and that's a big one.
Right.
A lot of church planters don't realize that, God is calling them to something, but it may not be to lead a church plant.
Yeah.
It might be to be on a church planting team or to do something else. So assessment is a big one. And of course, we're going to do all the evaluations, both with the planter and his wife and their team. And then also encouragement along the way. We have 60 coaches that have planted better than me,
Impossible.
That probably 58 of them are better than me.
Impossible.
And then there's one that's probably
Christopher.
a failure. So they in different regions as well.
Yes.
Because I'm in Florida, and if you're around in Florida, of course we can travel and this and that. But if you can connect with someone, so we have coaches to encourage and also to equip. We have education materials. We have a partnership with Western Seminary where they offer their church planting resources.
Oh, wonderful.
Through Cultivate. So it's basically from start to finish, and even after the church is planted, that follow-up, encouragement type thing, like after the first 6 months, how's it going?
Yeah.
What's going on? Just to have someone in your corner to walk through it with you is what Cultivate does.
Well, it's wonderful. Well, glad to talk to you about it. Thank you so much for letting me host this podcast.
This is good. This might have been the best that the podcast has been hosted.
I don't know about that. But what do you say at the end? Do you have a slogan you say at the end?
No, I say, hey, this was fun, Mike. Let's see you around.
Hey, this was fun, Brian. See you around.
See you around. All right.
Hey there, this is Danny Height, pastor of the Oceanside United Reformed Church. I think it was like a year or two ago, I found out about the Expositors Collective. I was outside doing some yard work, looking for some podcasts to listen to. I have a whole bunch of history and theology ones, but I wanted one that was specifically about pastoral ministry or preaching. And I saw an episode with Brian Chappell, who's a Presbyterian pastor, whose book on preaching I've read, and he was on this Expositors Collective. I listened to it, and to my shock, he was a Presbyterian on a Calvary Chapel podcast, which is really cool. So long story short, I come to find out about Mike Neglia, Expositors Collective, the podcast, the conference, the trainings. So I want to invite you out to come and learn about the Word, how to teach it, how to read it, how to just take it to heart. And so the conference is May 15th to 16th, Temecula, California, Reliance Church. I'll be speaking on the value and power of expository preaching. There'll be 8 other teachers on kind of main topics, but also small groups, interactive, how to teach the Bible. So really important, really helpful. Again, expositorscollective.org. You'll see all the information there. But just to say, this is the best podcast on preaching and pastoral ministry out there. I'm a firm believer, and I've grown more in my preaching, I think, the last couple of years than probably the 20 years previous, just by listening to all the different preachers and teachers, their experiences, their ups and downs, and their positive how-to. So Expositors Collective, training, Temecula, California, May 15th, 16th. God bless you.